Hey folks, Andy Allen here for Applied Shotokan. I'd like to share some thoughts, and it's regarding the emphasis of hip rotation in Shotokan karate, in particular in Kihon, for the purpose of generating power. And I think there's some problems with the way we teach Kihon, or at least the way most people teach Kihon in Shotokan. Power generation is accomplished in a number of different ways. There's not just one way to generate power. If you look at a boxer doing various punches, it's very different than a traditional Shotokan karate punch. In terms of power generation, the body has many moving parts, and there's many pieces of this puzzle that we have to consider if our interest is penetrating a target to generate impact. Hip rotation is definitely one of them, but I would argue that there's too much emphasis placed on hip rotation. And by that I mean we place so much emphasis on hip rotation that we neglect the other pieces of the puzzle, therefore limiting our ability to generate power. Now I'm making general statements here, and your experience from one dojo to the next might be different, but there's one exercise that you've done thousands of times if you've been in this gig for a long time, and it's the reverse punch. And let's look at the reverse punch in its simplest form. From a Zenkutsudashi, you either have an arm outstretched like this or a Giranbrai, and you throw your reverse punch. 1, 2, doesn't matter if it's from Giranbrai, and if we have it, couple it with a Kizamizuki, but the bones are the same. So the criteria that we typically are taught for good form are as such. Front knee stays still during our movement. Back knee is straight. Now maybe some instructors might advocate a Fudodashi into Zenkutsudashi. That's actually better. But the front foot is typically glued to the floor when you're doing this most basic version of the Yakuzuki. The left hip joint stays stationary as the right hip joint comes forward. Heel stays on the floor. You're not allowed to lift it up. The rotation of the body is such that I stop when my shoulders and chest are square to my target. We don't over-rotate. Shoulders are down and back, and of course your higite. So your proper Yakuzuki looks something like this. All right? Now, by drilling that kind of technique over and over and over, we get really good at rotating the hips to generate that fast, snappy punch. That's a positive thing, but as I mentioned before, there's other pieces of the puzzle, other components that we neglect by doing that to generate power. First of all, one thing we need to do to generate more impact is move our mass in to the target. So if this is my target here, instead of staying stationary like this and making a reverse punch, I want to move my mass forward towards the target. In order to do that, there's a couple things that work here. My front foot needs to move. Okay? Move my foot forward. Undeniably, moving your mass into the target is going to generate more impact for a linear kind of punch. Second problem I see with this basic Yakuzuki is that we always insist that the heel stays on the floor. If we see a student do this, and it happens all the time with beginners, we say, no, that's wrong, keep your heel down on the floor. And if they've done some boxing, they might kind of scratch their head wondering why. But it's often sold as a necessity for developing stability at impact. And then that's kind of a whole other topic there, but you don't need to keep your heel down. In fact, if I keep my heel down, I'm limiting how much I can move my mass into the target, okay? If I allow my heel to raise as I shift my body forward, with my rotation, I can generate more movement of my mass into the target, generating more impact. Another thing that's emphasized is the shoulders need to kind of stop at a square position. So if you imagine this is my target line, and my shoulders make a line perpendicular to that, okay? Instead, I would advocate, if the distance allows such, to over-rotate. So instead of stopping here at a square position, over-rotate so this shoulder actually comes forward. All right, that's going to allow for more movement to generate more speed or impact. Next thing is posture. So for correct posture when we're doing our Shotokan Kihon, the spine needs to be straight up and down. Kicks are a bit different, but with our hand techniques, including Yakuzuki, we keep a straight spine, like that. If we see a student, whether it be a white belt or fourth dan, doing this, we kind of discourage that kind of change in posture. If done correctly, and when needed, lean forward can actually help you generate power. I don't think it should be a hard and fast rule to keep your spine straight. So, and this is related to transfer of mass into the target. So instead of staying stationary like this and keep my spine straight, if I shift my body, transfer my weight to the front foot, allow the hip to come up, the heel to come up rather, rotate, and if the distance is such that I need a little more range, allow your body to lean forward. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You see boxers doing that all the time. All right, the last thing we see in the correct Yakuzuki is the use of hikate. Okay? I'm not going to go into detail on that one, but you don't need hikate to generate power. We're better off practicing good habits, keeping our hand up for protection. Okay, I can hear some of the counter arguments already. A lot of people might be saying, well, that's just a beginner way of punching, that static stance, just emphasizing hip rotation, boom, boom, boom. That's just a white belt way of learning the reverse punch. It's teaching the basic skills, the basic components. Okay, that's not a bad philosophy. Start simple and build on things. However, that way of punching we can't use as is. We can't use that lack of footwork, that rigid stance, that formalized structure. We can't use that in a fighting or sparring context. So why is it that we are teaching things that we eventually have to throw away? Look at other martial artists which are 100% focused on efficacy. Boxers, Muay Thai fighters, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo. None of those martial artists are going to practice things that they have to throw away eventually. If you're looking at a boxer, maybe the first thing you kind of learn in a boxing program is like a jab cross or a kizame, zuki, yakuzuki you call it. They're not going to teach it in a way where it is not functional. It's basic, yeah, but on those basic skills, they build and build and build a more expansive repertoire of techniques. Also, even though some people might dismiss what I demonstrated as a beginner kind of technique, the fact of the matter is that all over the world, there are Shotokan black belts still practicing that way. It might just be in your warm-up, or if you're in an all ranks class, you might spend quite a bit of time on it. Heck, if you might be in a seminar with one of the masters out there and practicing Yakuzuki from a static front stance over and over and over for an hour. Why? It's not functional as is. I think it's time we start making karate training functional. I'm sure you have some opinions. Good or bad, let me know. I love having intelligent and respectful conversation. Until next time, I'm Andy Allen for Applied Shotokan.